Hi, everyone. I obviously couldn't go a whole week without publishing a podcast episode. I am just jumping in here, editing Lauren, to let you guys know that this is a special bonus episode of Infinite Scroll. We got the opportunity to interview the CEO of Mozilla Corporation. It was an opportunity that we were so excited to get. However, we did run into some technical issues, and the space that we were given to do the podcast interview, unfortunately, was not a podcast booth. It was a room in between two lounges here at Web Summit in Doha. So please bear with the sound. I think the quality of our voices is relatively okay, but you can hear people like eating lunch in the background. You can hear forks and knives and things. So anyways, please keep that in mind. But the episode is so informative. If you really need a breakdown of data privacy, internet health, why you should care about net neutrality, and all of these topics that keep floating around in like the tech and internet culture world, but feel a little bit too big, I think, sometimes for like the average user to fully grasp, this is the episode for you. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoy this episode, and I will talk to you on Monday. Bye. Hi, everyone, and welcome to a bonus episode of Infinite Scroll, a podcast about internet culture, the creator economy, and how social media is shaping Gen Z. I am so excited about our bonus episode today because I am bringing you guys an interview with probably one of the most senior experts that we have ever spoken to on this podcast in relation to internet culture and the digital space. I am joined today by Laura Chambers, the CEO of Mozilla Corporation. So I have been a fan of Mozilla products for years. I was just telling Alex this story, who works on my team, but when my friends and I first went to university and we got our first laptops, we all downloaded Firefox right away. That was our preferred browser. So I wanted to speak with Laura today because one of the biggest misconceptions about millennials and Gen Z is that we all have this in-depth understanding of tech and internet culture, but after running this business for 5 years, I have come to realize that's not always the case. So today I'll be speaking with Laura about the open internet and user privacy and what those actually mean for Gen Z. So welcome, Laura.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to be with you here in Doha.
Yes, how are you enjoying Web Summit?
The energy is incredible. Just walking around the floor, there's so many great ideas, there's so many passionate people. It's lovely to see such a great community working on the future of what the internet should be.
First, we're going to tackle what keeping the internet healthy and open really means. So this is a big topic, I know, but I know that Mozilla is big on prioritizing a healthy and open internet. Could you tell us exactly what that means?
It's probably worth a trip down memory lane. If we go back to the early days of the internet, it was not at all guaranteed that it would be the way that it is today. We're very used to going to a browser and having complete access to all of the internet. But in the early days, it was really starting to trend towards closed. We all thought that, websites, information would be behind paywalls and only accessible to a few. So in the early days of the internet, Mozilla and a bunch of other very strong advocates fought very hard for the internet to be open so that there would be equal access and opportunity for everyone to engage. And of course, that's led to the internet that we have today, which is open and has led to so much innovation, creativity, access, learning, and growth. Obviously, AI is the new frontier where it's being challenged again, but that's why we stand for openness. We shouldn't take it for granted because the internet left to its own devices will always trend towards closed. That's where the power accrues. When we talk about healthy internet, again, the hope of the internet in the early days when you were even downloading that first browser was that the internet should be a place of joy, of creativity, of individual expression, of connectivity, and a place that pushes society way forward in really positive ways. That isn't necessarily the internet that we're in today, right? We're seeing that it's very hard to trust content. We're seeing that information is being scraped and consumed in different ways. We're seeing that communities are being split apart rather than brought together. And so when we talk about an open and healthy internet, it's really sort of achieving the promise of what the internet could and should be, which is this wonderful place. Right now it feels a little like it's accruing to a place that's closed, where we're sort of fueled by dopamine hits, where we sort of have advertising hounding us everywhere we go. It can and should be better than that, and that's the fight that we're constantly battling.
Another big topic, just to kick us off, we're just tackling them all right at the start, net neutrality. So that is the idea that all internet traffic should be treated equally. It's a prominent aspect of keeping the internet open and diverse. Mozilla has been really vocal about this, even taking the FCC to court over it a couple of years ago. Why is this such a critical issue, and what do you think the internet would look like without it?
Well, let's just use a simple example, right? So again, net neutrality means everyone can have the same equal access to internet, right? You don't have to pay more for speed or access. Very similar to what we were talking about, the basic principles of an open internet. So let's give one example. Imagine two students, both of them are studying at university. They both have internet at home. One of them can afford to pay more for internet, the other can't. Right? In a world of net neutrality, they have very different experiences where net neutrality goes away. And so the people that need access the most have the least ability to pay for it and to get it. And so it creates to a splintering of society and a really a dual world. It doesn't just hurt individuals, it also hurts entrepreneurs. If you're trying to start a small business and you really rely on the internet for your business to grow, it's unlikely that you'd have the same funding to be able to compete with the big players. And so you'll have less competition and less innovation on the internet as well. And so all those principles we talked about a healthy and open internet where everyone can access it, it's a great place to be, there's tremendous innovation, it pushes the whole community forward, those things are under threat if net neutrality goes away.
Okay, so overall, the major aspects of a healthy internet sound like they include maintaining open access, civil discourse, and critical thinking. Would you agree? Yes? So with increasing concerns around censorship, we've seen the rise of algospeak, for example, and other workarounds to avoid content suppression online. How can everyday users help keep the internet open while navigating these challenges?
Yeah, so I think one of the critical things you need to do here is to make thoughtful choices about what platforms you're on and who you support. There are platforms that really care about open communication. There are platforms that really care about your data privacy. And there are others that don't so much, right? And so Mozilla is very much in that first camp. We're actually a non-profit. And so as CEO, my job is not to create profits for shareholders. It's actually the coolest job in the world. I can go to my board and say I'm going to deliver zero profit this year because I'm doing these extraordinary things for the internet, and then be psyched. It's like the best job. But what we do care about is privacy, right? And so for example, if you use Firefox as a browser, you can be really confident that your data isn't going anywhere that you don't choose it to be, and it's only being used for your benefit. Or in the example of social media, you can choose alternative platforms like Blue Sky. You can look at things like Mastodon about the decentralized web. There's a lot of people out there that are creating technical alternatives for users so that they can be free and open, so that they can't be monitored and censored and surveyed. And so voting with your feet, I think as a Gen Z and as an internet user is really important because you can support those alternatives and have better experiences online.
Amazing. So I wanted to circle back to how you touched on AI earlier. Obviously, AI has become such a big part of the internet these past few years, especially when it comes to moderation. But at the same time, there is this growing concern that AI has killed the internet, quote unquote, with theories circulating like the dead internet theory, which claims that AI-run bots surpass human-generated content online. So I am curious to hear where you think AI fits into the future of an open and healthy internet. And also, I'm just curious from my own perspective, do you believe in the dead internet theory?
Look, I think the experience of the internet is so different. I have my kids are Gen Z and Gen Alpha, and they are growing up in the world where you can't trust anything that you see. You know, I used to see a photo and say, what a beautiful photo. They see a photo and say, is it fake? Right? Like just a completely different experience of the world around you and of the internet. So I think that there is still going to be amazing content on the internet. I think it's going to be harder to find. And so that's why we're investing in tools that can help with that. We think that creating the infrastructure around trust, transparency, choice in the world of AI is going to be really important. There's a lot of forces that would pull those away, but we're trying to create counter forces for it. One very simple example, we created an extension on the Firefox browser. It's called Deep Fake Detector. It's very simple. You can just get it to scan some text and it will tell you whether it is likely human written or not. Very, very simple, but the team's done great work. We've brought in some of the best sort of scientists and thinkers in the world around this, and we launched it. It's in beta right now, and we open source the code so that others can build on it and create and do all that type of stuff. So yes, there's rubbish out there. There's probably going to be a lot more rubbish out there, but we can use technology, right? And we can work with other technologists and other entrepreneurs to build alternatives so that it is still joyful and easy to navigate. It just takes more work than it used to do.
Okay, so I wanted to kind of switch gears a little bit and move to privacy online. So as platforms rely more on AI for moderation and data-driven decision-making, questions around user privacy and data security become even more pressing. Obviously, privacy is a massive topic in the online world, but broadly speaking, discussions around online privacy seem to fall into two big conversations: users choosing to stay anonymous online and the way that the tech giants collect and use our data. So do you think that this is a fair distinction, or are there other key aspects that we should be considering as well?
Yeah, I think it could be very easy to be complacent about your data and your information online. I think, again, when I started on the internet, we were so precious about every single data, every single piece, and over time somehow it changed. And I think people growing up now probably just assume that someone's got all their information everywhere, and it would be easy to be dismissive of it. But we shouldn't be. And there's a few really key reasons why. The first is around just knowing that when you're using products that consume all your data, they're using them back at you to influence you. And they're using it not for your own best interest, but to make money, which is the job of companies. That's okay, but it's important to be aware of that. So for example, if they have all of your browsing information, all of your shopping information, they're going to be changing your experience online to nudge your behavior, to get you to buy something, to shape the way you spend your time, right? And so the more data that you give, the more power you give to other people to shape who you are and what you do and where you spend your money. So it's good to be aware of that, right? The second thing that's good to be aware of is the more that data that's collected from you, and by the way, AI is only going to amplify this, right? The more that there's opportunities to survey what's going on with you, and that can lead to profiling. There's a lot of scary things that can happen to people where the information that's collected on you can be used against you by people that have access to that information. And I'd say even if you don't care about any of those things, right, and some people don't, you should still care about your communities, right? There are people that are really worried about this and very vulnerable to it. And so again, I think Gen Z as a generation is incredibly digitally aware. But I think could play such a critical role in expecting more, demanding more transparency, demanding more information and control over what happens to their data. And also, as we said before, by voting with their feet, making choices, spending your money, spending your time on platforms that are aligned with your values could have a huge impact. So I know it's easy to be a little complacent about privacy and anonymity and to make it sort of oversimplified, but they're really critical things, and that the work that this generation is doing now is going to shape the future for the next generations as well. We shouldn't take it for granted that everyone gets access to your data. You should own it. You should be clear on how it's being used. You should be clear that it's being used for your own benefit.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things that I hear amongst my age group and younger is I don't care about where my data goes because I want better ads on Instagram or whatever it is. It's so true. It's something that I think, as I said in the intro, we do think that Gen Z, millennials, we are, the most kind of tech savvy generations. But when it comes to things like this, I think a lot of times it's well, why should I care?
Actually, advertising is a great example. So advertising has been around on the internet forever. It's actually a really important part of the internet. It's how the internet is monetized, which allows a lot of companies to be successful and actually for the internet to be free and open for users. That's great. What we don't like and what we've never liked about advertising is how your data is stored and used. And so at Mozilla, we're actually tackling that. So we're investing in some really great technology. We just bought a company called Anonym, actually, that will ensure, it's got the technology to ensure that if your data is pulled in for advertising, it is anonymized, it is grouped, it is sort of the individual, the very personal individual pieces are taken out of it. So you can still have great ads, you can still participate, but it doesn't need to, they don't need all the data that they take, right? You can still get great performance using much better technology. There's things like double encrypted clean rooms, we've got advances in cryptography, we have differential privacy. There is technology that can make advertising work, but make it more privacy conscious. Everyone should be advocating for that, right? And advertisers and publishers won't do it unless there's pressure, because why bother? But we are creating the technology, we're building the platforms for it. What we also need to do is build the awareness so that regulators and users demand it, because we all should. It's very reasonable for that to happen.
Absolutely. I think it's that awareness piece that is often missing for sure. So the conversation around privacy has really accelerated in these past few years, arguably due to the growing power of tech giants, obviously, and the fact that AI tools are being trained on our digital footprint. Why do you think that digital privacy conversations have gained so much traction recently? And how do you see them moving forward?
Yeah, well, so it's back to the early days, right? In the early days of the internet, we were all super excited about privacy and very aware of it, and then it's gone away. There's this really interesting, I was speaking to a behavioral scientist and researcher the other day that helped me understand this disconnect between the fact that we should care about safety and privacy on the internet, but we kind of don't. And he described, like, sort of physiologically as humans, we are trained to have sensory input to let us know if we're safe or not. So if we're in a dark alley and we hear a rustle, like, we're aware and we're alert. That doesn't happen on the internet. You're not getting any signals. You're not hearing someone sniff your cookies, right? Like, there's nothing going on for us to have that physiological reaction that you need to take safety seriously. And so that's a big challenge for us to bridge the awareness and the care and the concern about this. I think, to your question, the reason it's relevant right now is Gen AI, right? Like, everyone is working towards agents. Agents are going to suck up all of your data. Like, look at all of your emails, all of your calendar, all of your daily discussions, all of your documents, with the goal of making your life easier by doing actions for you and so forth. And so people are now like, well, that's everything, right? It's my entire computer, my entire life will be sucked up to this agent. And the utility sounds interesting, right? If it could make my life easier, but it's a whole new level of data consumption. And so again, agents can be great, right? Like, we all would love our lives to be better and easier, but how can we use technology to make it better? So for example, what if we could run agents locally on your device? That would take some work to get the data usage down and the cost down. A lot of people are working on it, but if it stays on your device instead of going to the cloud, you could have the same utility, but it's way more private, right? And so we're working a lot with entrepreneurs. We just ran a builders program, and our whole focus was local AI, right? Like, how can we bring AI onto your device so it can be more private and actually run faster and cheaper? There's some great innovation going there. So I think that people are worried, they should be worried, but look for the people that are doing great things and choose solutions that are keeping your information more private and more secure.
All right, I want to pivot one last time. I wanted to talk a little bit more about Mozilla and privacy. I know you've mentioned it here and there, but user privacy is clearly a priority for Mozilla, especially with the Firefox browser. Could you break it down in layman's terms? What does Mozilla do to protect privacy?
Well, so privacy is, as you said, the core of what we do, and so it is built in by default. There is so much work behind the scenes on the Firefox browser in particular, to keep your data private. The first thing is, we don't collect your data unless we have to and unless it's in your benefit. And if we do collect it, we give you choice, right? And really clear choice. So we are actually private by default, which is not the way that other people are. Let's make that practical, right? What are some examples of why that might matter? One is banking information. So if you ask anyone that is a really thoughtful technologist in the space of privacy, they will tell you that they might use different browsers for different activities, but they always come to Firefox if they have to do banking. They just know it's more secure. Another example, this goes back to local that we were talking about before, is translation. So a lot of browsers will translate things for you from different languages on the browser. When we do it locally on your device. No information gets sent to a server. And so, for example, imagine if you are living in a different country and you get a tax return, you don't know how to read it, you're going to use a translator. but that, like, imagine all of your tax return information sitting on a cloud somewhere being used for whatever, or being given to whoever. You don't know. But if you use Firefox, it happens locally on the device. And so in every feature we do, we're always looking at how do we minimize the data. If we collect data, how do we keep it very anonymous and very secure? And how do we make sure that it's being used for you and what you want to do versus making profits for us? And we've made a lot of choices over time that are for the user and for privacy, not for profit. We got rid of cookies. Early on, it cost us a lot of money as a business to do it, but we did it because it's the right thing to do. And so it's so central to everything we do, but those are some of the ways that it comes to life, I think, for users.
Mozilla also has a reputation for being transparent, as you have just been, about your privacy practices.
Yes.
How does this transparency help foster trust? And what does Mozilla do to communicate these efforts to users?
Yeah, so we're spending a ton of time on this, and we do constantly. So there, again, as I said, we're private by default, but what we want to do, and we're coming up with new ways of doing this, so you'll actually see a lot of this coming from us over the next year or so, is to give users a very clear choice. So for example, if you like shopping and you let us know that you like shopping, we may say to you, hey, we've got this fantastic product called Review Checker. Would you like to switch it on? Here's the data that it would collect, here's how you would keep that data safe, and here's the benefit that you would get from that, right? And so surfacing these opportunities to people where people love utility, they love these different experiences, they're fantastic, but you need to have the choice and have the agency for it, rather than it being just default on and all your data sucked up. Now you need to do that in a way that isn't complicated. Like, people don't love thousands of choices being thrown at them all the time, and so that's the balance that we need to draw. But we're really, in everything we do, we just want people to know, we want to be clear about it, and we want you to be in the driver's seat so you can make your own trade-offs about what data you want collected, and what benefit you want to get from it.
Data breaches have been increasingly common, eroding user trust in platforms, browsers, and search engines. What role does Mozilla play in preventing these breaches, and how do you rebuild the trust when the privacy is compromised?
Yeah, so we have an incredibly talented team that look at this not just for Firefox but across the web. We're always monitoring data issues and problems, and if anything comes up in the browser, the team is extremely fast at solving it, like world class. And also, if we notice issues with other browsers or companies, we work with them very proactively and quickly as well. So this is a core strength of Firefox. As you can imagine, the team's pretty passionate about data. We take it very seriously, and we're always monitoring and very, very quick about it. We've also developed tools, again, to put the power back in the hands of users. So we have a product called Monitor. I use it. It's pretty cool, and what Monitor does is it scours the internet for information about you that's out there, and it shows you what's out there, and it can clean it up. And it just sits there in the background doing it all the time on your behalf. Good product. So those are the types of things where we're trying to really make it, again, transparent, put you in control so that you can see what's out there about you and have control over who gets to have your data, and get rid of it if you don't want them to have it.
Amazing. Okay, well, I have one last question for you, Laura. Many digital tools today are based on personalization, which often requires collecting data. Do you think that the drive for personalization will always conflict with privacy concerns, or can both be achieved in a balanced way? And the reason why I ask this is, obviously, I mean, as you just said, you have a child that is Gen Z. Personalization is like the number one thing that Gen Z looks for in fashion, beauty, any product that they're consuming.
Yeah, personalization's great, right? And that comes to this kind of core need. We want the world to reflect ours. We want to shape our world. It doesn't need to be in conflict with privacy. Right, and that's the example we gave before about advertising. You can have a great advertising experience, you can have ads that are personalized, but I don't need to know that you on a Tuesday bought a pair of red shoes in this particular shop at 2 p.m. and then did this other. I don't need to know that amount of detail. That borders on a little creepy, but that data can be brought into a system, it can be encrypted, it can be anonymized, it can be generalized, and then we can still bring stuff back to you that is relevant. So personalization can happen, innovation can happen, while keeping privacy standards high. That technology is available, it just needs to become standard. And that's what we're pushing on with our own products, with the industry, and also with regulators to create a sort of a better balance for users.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I think this has been really informative. This is like education 101, I feel. Thank you so much for joining me today, Laura. So that is it for this bonus episode, you guys. I love you. Please rate, review, and subscribe. I miss chatting with you guys every single day, but I am off doing my Founder Girl shit this week. But I will be back in your ears every single day on Monday.